All right, welcome to another edition of the Edlow Podcast. Subscribe. I am sick, but that's okay. We keep going regardless, right? And excuse me, I put out there that I was going to do a Just Me podcast this week, and I'm going to record it. And so here I am. I am recording it. And I asked, for those of you who are new, welcome to the Edlow Podcast. It's just me today. Just Me podcast is really just, I don't know, some places it's a Q&A, it's ask me anything. There's all sorts of different things. And so I put out on all my social media. You can follow me on Edlow_podcast at Instagram, Edlow Podcast on Facebook, something Edlow Podcast on TikTok. And I present to everybody and I say, if you have a question that you'd like me to ask to answer, please put it out. Send it to me and I'll do it. And I do them all anonymously so nobody knows who's asking. And I got to tell you, I got a lot of questions, a lot of different topics that I really enjoy talking about. Some I don't like talking about, but regardless, we're going to do it anyway because that's the kind of host I am. Okay, so let's start with what I do like talking about. Now, for those of you who've been around for a little while, you know that I'm a Sacramento Kings fan. Pretty hardcore. We have season tickets, had for a while. Me and my kids enjoy going to the Kings games quite a bit. Love taking friends, loved ones to the game. And so I go to a lot of those games. And in this podcast, I talk about the Kings a lot. And on top of that, I have had a sports analyst here in Sacramento, Matt George, who used to host the Locked On Kings podcast, who has since taken a job at Sports Talk 1140 here in Sacramento and has launched the Matt George podcast, who's been following the Kings now, part of the press corps for the Kings, probably last 8+ years. I've known of him ever since I started with my season tickets, and good guy. And he, this year, as with all sports analysts, have been very critical of the Kings. The Kings are 19 and I think they're 20-50 right now. It's the worst record the Kings have ever had, and that says a lot. They've been in Sacramento for, I think, 41, maybe 42 years now, 41, I think. And of those 41 years, I can think of maybe 6 or 7 winning seasons. And only maybe a handful, maybe a little bit more than a handful of playoff appearances. So it's been a rough go. And Matt George is a local guy, so he's been here for all of it. But there's something different about this year where we have just really, it's been hard to watch. And I think the reason for that is because there was some optimism that maybe we make the play in. Well, let me go back. So 3 years ago, the Kings were the number 3 seed and broke a 16-year playoff drought and took the Golden State Warriors to 7 games in the first round and ended up losing in game 7, which was sad, but there was a lot of hope for the future with the team kind of consisting of major players being De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. And then it has been a major fast downward spiral since to the worst record in the league. And that was pretty much, you can say what you want about the organization and whatnot, but for whatever reason, the teams just don't work. And there's been lots of turnover in coaches and GMs and all sorts of different things. So with that, Matt George this year has been critical, particularly of how the Kings are utilizing their roster. The roster is not well put together. We have 4 former All-Stars, 4 former multiple-time All-Stars, 2 of which are surefire first ballot Hall of Famers in Russell Westbrook and DeMar DeRozan. We also have Zach LaVine and Domantas Sabonis, who are multiple-time All-Stars. And yet, despite all that, the record is terrible. They just don't play well together. Now, there's also a portion of that is that the team has never had their starting 5 all healthy at the same time. They've literally never had their same starting 5 or their original starting 5 playing at the same time. There was a trade for DeAndre Hunter from the Cavs, which was a good trade, but now he's out with a surgery uh, that ended his season. Domantas Sabonis had season-ending surgery, and so did Zach LaVine. So we're without 3 starters now, and so yeah, what Matt has been saying essentially is that we should be really focusing on the young core. We have 4 really young players in Keegan Murray, as well as Nick Clifford, Maxine Renaud, and Dylan Cardwell, and they're all progressing very, very well. And at times, I will say, and Matt George is right in this, is there are times where the way that they're playing doesn't make a lot of sense. At crucial moments, they are playing the veterans when the argument could be made that they should be giving those minutes to the young players and helping them progress. And when Russell Westbrook is on the court with the young players, there are times where it doesn't make a lot of sense what Russ is doing, with whether he passes or shoots. And anyhow, so Matt George has been very critical, and it kind of came to a head last week, um, with a press conference where Russell Westbrook was asked questions, and he essentially called Matt George out. So the question was, "What do you think of that, Josh?" And just so everybody knows, what I typically do is I address kind of some of the more jovial, more less serious topics at the beginning, and we go to the meat towards the end. So, but anyhow, this was a good one I thought to start with. So a message came through and said, "What did you think about the exchange between Matt George and Russell Westbrook?" So I'm gonna play what Russ said, and then I'll comment. So here we go.
Russ, how you doing, man? I, 19 games left now. Like, just kind of what's the focus? Like, as you guys close this out, you hit 50 losses tonight, and you're kind of doing some things, developing young guys and stuff. Like, what can be accomplished like in these last 19 games? Go out, compete. This is a game. You professional, go out and play. Um, and that's all you can do. Which I think though, because y'all got a lot of answers and y'all always be talking. Oh, it's very interesting. Nobody, y'all got no. You guys have a lot of opinions about how we do what we doing. What you got? Oh, you? Yeah, you make a lot of statements and broad statements that you have no context. So, where do you get your context from? Are you in practice? No. Are you at a film session? No. Are you anywhere around the building? Yes. No, I haven't seen you in practice. Not inside it. So the false context of, and actually, do you know me? I know you. No, you don't know me. You don't know me. You don't know me. But you make a lot of comments as though you do know me. No, you know my intent. I see it. I see it. But I'm asking you now, but you don't know me, right? So you don't know anything about me. Not you personally. No. Thank you. That's good.
Okay, so hopefully everyone could hear that. I'm not exactly the most technically sound podcaster doing this all on my own, but as you can see, I so asking me my opinion on this, I can understand both sides of it. I can understand the frustration. Russell Westbrook is a surefire Hall of Famer, and this year he has busted a bunch of accolades. So he is the top. He's now the top rebounding point guard of all time. I believe he's way high up there on the assist leaderboard, points leaderboard, triple doubles leaderboard. Um, so I think that sometimes Matt has been saying that, suggesting that perhaps the intent of leaving Russell Westbrook out there is for him to chase more records rather than giving the young kids chances to progress. And I can understand why Russell Westbrook would take issue with that. What I don't necessarily agree with Russell Westbrook is the idea that because he's not in practice, he can't have an opinion. He can't call anybody out. Because I got to tell you, I'm there every single night. I played basketball, throughout my young life, and there's just a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense that they're doing. I mean, it's bad basketball. It is not team basketball. They get little spurts here and there, but man, it's hard to watch. I've been a season ticket holder now since 2018. They've mostly been not good. but every other year, it's been at least fun to watch. It's not fun to watch. It's hard to watch. Now, for someone like me who really is interested in the strategy of the game long term, I am very interested in how Max and Neek and um, Dylan and Keegan Murray and these guys all kind of grow as a core. I'm actually excited for that 2, 3 years from now. But right now it's hard, and it's you don't have to because he's not in practice, he's not allowed to say what he sees with his own eyes. It's not hard to call out. I mean, there are times where now let me also say, Russell Westbrook, from my view, and I'm pretty close, and I hear what they say sometimes. I do think that Russell Westbrook does take pride in being a leader to young kids, particularly Max, the a center. He runs him through the pick and roll quite a bit. I would even argue, not being someone who's been in practice or anything, but it does seem like Russ has really been integral in his improvement. And Malik Monk said when he was a young player on the Lakers that Russ was his favorite teammate. So I get Russ being upset that they're questioning his intent. However, there are a lot of times where maybe Max comes off a pick and roll and has a good look at the basket, or there are times where Nick Clifford is open on the wing and Russ just takes a ridiculous three that makes no sense and doesn't even come close to hitting it. There are times when, there's a crucial shot that needs to be made and Russ takes the shot when that was definitely not the best shot. Not always. And that is something I think has been a Russell Westbrook thing forever. It's just the player he is, so I don't think there's any harm in that here. I think or rather, I don't think there's any ill intent here, like he's intentionally doing something different than he always did. But it is interesting to see. So, I guess my answer is I can understand both sides, and I hope first of all, Matt George is a class act, nice guy. Granted, he does not have actual basketball experience. He watches it but hasn't played it. Other than maybe middle school basketball. But like I said earlier, you can see with your own eyes what's going on, and it is not pretty. So I chalk this up to frustration, and I think if they actually talk to each other and were honest and had a conversation, I think that they would see that they can get along. So I know that Matt did his own response on the Matt George podcast. You can go listen to that. I haven't listened to it yet. So, okay, that's my thought on the Kings. So let's see. I got a bunch of different questions on, like I said earlier, on a bunch of different topics. So let's go through them and we'll just kind of go through them in basic order. These are fun. There's a lot of fun ones here. So let's start with this. What changes need to happen to improve the amount and quality of newer movies? So here's what I think about movies. I think that movies have forsaken storytelling for CGI. I think that that CGI has really ruined the filmmaking process in some ways. um, the only way I can liken it is to pro wrestling and some of the arguments that pro wrestlers have had, and that is that similarly, a lot of pro wrestlers have become the best athletes in pro wrestling history. They are basically acrobats. They can do almost anything. However, because they can do really, really cool moves, the art of storytelling is, I wouldn't say lost, but certainly not as prevalent in pro wrestling today. So, and so because of that, the overall quality of the show suffers at times. And I think that that's what we're seeing here with CGI. So they're relying on cool effects and cool movies, and big budgets to um, to hide the fact that they don't have really strong stories. And so, now that's not all movies, but I think that that's a part of it. I think if I were if I were yeah, so I think that what needs to happen is a focus and emphasis on telling good stories. People will go to movies with good stories or movies that are different. Um, for example, Disney's a great example. And some people might disagree on the reasoning for this, but Disney has um, several movies that were remakes, live action remakes of cartoons, and most of them did not do well at the box office. However, new movies like um, Onward or Coco or Encanto or Moana or what was the one with all the feelings? I can't remember the name of that one. They all did very, very well. And so why? Because they were new stories that were interesting and it drew people in. You don't need to have giant budgets. Um, so yeah, that is that is my opinion on that. Okay, so the next question. Going on the Disney theme, who is your favorite Disney character and why? This is a hard one for me. I have a lot of cool Disney characters, and I wanted to play with, like, do I wanna go back in time to, like, some deep cut? But I think my favorite character might be Mufasa from The Lion King, um, for several reasons. One, he is a perfect example of leadership through responsibility. He, um, he teaches his son wonderful lessons. You know, his leadership style is about service, it's not necessarily about power. He teaches good lessons about balance and discipline, you know, that everything is a part of the circle of life. We eat the antelope, but they're also part of a greater balance. He understands that as the ruler, he has to protect the entire community, not just himself. He shows courage instead of fear. He's always imparting wisdom to his son, even after he passed away. And he's a great example of integrity and being a good father. So I think Mufasa would probably be the one. Um, okay, I know you love wrestling. I'm just curious if you could give someone like me a background on wrestling because I don't know much about it. Yeah, so I don't really know how where to go. There's a thousand different ways I could go on this, but let me just start this way. So wrestling, um, pro wrestling started with with the carnivals. So they would set up in the tents, they would set up a ring, and they would have a strong man there, and then they would have people. They would claim that people could come in and challenge the wrestling champion, but they would plant men in the crowd to come in and wrestle, and that would be the work for the carnival. And then from there, it developed into something different. And they had something called kayfabe, where they just hid the fact that it was staged for years and years and years. And so it started. The whole world was broken up into territories, almost like the mafia, where there was a certain promoter for each territory, and pro wrestlers would go from territory to territory to work. So sometimes, you know, they might show up here in the on the West Coast in Northern California and work for Roy Shire Big Time Wrestling, where they would do a lot of tours, you know, work at the Cow Palace or here in Sacramento at the Memorial Auditorium, or they would go down to the Carolinas and work for Jim Crockett, or they would go to New York and work for Vince McMahon Sr., or go up to Calgary and work for Stu Hart and train at the Hart Dungeon, and they would bounce around. And then Vince McMahon Jr., who everybody knows as Vince McMahon, actually purchased the New York territory from his dad. And this is at the advent of cable television, and decided he wanted to take it national by taking and recording his TV shows and sending videotapes out to the different TV stations and getting their airtime. And so he also went along around to all of the major territories and signed all of their top wrestlers. So all the top wrestlers came to New York and started getting involved in this national product. And the number one guy who was the head of all of it was Hulk Hogan. And so Hulk Hogan had just freshly come off of WrestleMania, or I'm sorry, of Rocky 3. and had a lot of notoriety from being in there. He was working in Minnesota for the AWA and decided to come and work for Vince McMahon Jr. Interestingly, Hulk Hogan worked for Vince Sr. When he got the offer, and Vince Sr. said, "No, you can't go," and he didn't went anyway. And so, anyway, Hulk Hogan became the figurehead, and it just blew up. And so now, rather than kayfabe being kind of the thing where everybody still pretends that it's real, the cat is out of the bag that it is a staged performance, and people watch it similarly to going to a theater in the round event. I describe it often to people for other people of it is a live action comic book. Think of it as theater, but for comic book nerds, and it's huge and it's a lot of fun. So encourage you to take a look at it. I didn't have these in order. Um, okay, here we go. Other than Rocky, what's your favorite TV series? What can you binge, and what do you watch for comfort? Other than Rocky, okay. Well, um, as far as like movies, I'm a big sucker for 80s and 90s pop culture stuff. So I really like Back to the Future. I like The Princess Bride. I like Clueless. I like um a bunch of those types of movies. But I think one that I really keep coming back to is The Karate Kid. And as far as favorite TV series, Cobra Kai was amazing. If you're an 80s nut, and you love the Karate Kid series, and when I say that, I mean the Karate Kid series absent the Jaden Smith debacle. They did do the Karate Kid Legends movie, and I did like that, which kinda combined the 2 Karate Kid series, and you had Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan both involved in that. That was pretty cool. But regardless, the original Karate Kid, the 3 Karate Kid movies, Cobra Kai is a spinoff of that, and I would say that Cobra Kai is the best, continuation of any 80s series that I've ever seen. It was so well done. It got a little over the top towards the end, but the first 3 or 4 seasons was absolutely the best callback I've ever seen. So it was great. As far as what I watch for comfort, I think fall asleep to The Office almost every single night. I love The Office so much. I don't know why that gives me comfort. It just does. I can binge it all day. I love The Princess Bride. One spring break, in high school, I was sick. I watched it every single day. I don't know why. I just felt the need to do it, and I did. Um, my favorite TV series of all time, I think I would say it's The Walking Dead. I really enjoyed that series. I loved the long, um, connection to the characters. There were a few characters that died, um, in that really shook me. I love Negan as I think Negan is one of the best villains of all time as well. So, okay, have you ever done a blooper reel? No, and here's why. I don't do any editing of my podcasts. So one of the things I tell all of my guests at the beginning when they come on is I say I do not edit for content. So anything that you hear, or anything that you say, it's gonna stick. So if you don't wanna say something, don't say it. Otherwise, it's gonna stay. So there's really not a blooper reel because there's no editing. So everything that you hear on here is just a straight conversation. So yeah, no blooper reel. What song do you listen to the most? I don't know. I am sure it's a Metallica song of some kind. I've been listening to a lot of Oasis, ever since I went and saw them this last, September with my kids. I love the song "Little by Little." You should look it up. It's a great one. And I love "Hello" and "Acquiesce," and of course, all the big songs too, "Champagne Supernova" and "Don't Look Back in Anger" and "Wonderwall." Um, but Metallica, yeah, big fan. So, it's probably so I don't know which one. Um, what's your favorite book and why? Okay, I used to read well, right now, all I read is I read all day. I read emails, law, research, so I don't. Pleasure reading is not other than maybe like magazine articles or news clippings. I don't really read novels anymore. Um, but one that I really loved was I was a big John Grisham fan, still am. Um, one of my favorite books that he did was called The Chamber. They made a movie about it, didn't do very well. The movies like A Time to Kill and The Firm and The Pelican Brief, those all did really well. This one though, The Chamber did not. But The Chamber was a great, in my view, was a great book. The premise is that um, in the Deep South, there was a Ku Klux Klan member on death row, and his grandson, who had just gone to law school, comes, who he does not know, comes to death row to try to save his life through appeals. And the father of the grandson had committed suicide, and so this was the only fatherly figure he had, and it was a fantastic ride. So that's I just liked it because it showed it. One, it did a great job of showing um, the humanity of everybody involved, even the racist Ku Klux Klan member. There were times where you sympathized and empathized with him. Um, so there was that. It was just very interesting. What is your third favorite sport to watch behind wrestling and Kings basketball? I would say probably MMA. I like UFC. Maybe boxing. I do like to watch baseball live. That's fun. Um, it's just such a passive game, especially when you go to San Francisco and go to Oracle Park. Um, it's just a fun. It's just a fun go. Um, you don't even have to like baseball. You could literally just walk around the whole stadium and just it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. So, and there's also something to be said sometimes, on a Sunday afternoon, I like just turning on the game and falling asleep, So, um, okay, let's see. What's your favorite way to unwind at the end of a stressful day? I don't know, just hanging out with my kids is fun. I well, I think that I like turning on and watching. Um, I like watching trashy reality TV shows. I love, watching Married at First Sight and Love Is Blind and shows like that. It's always fun to watch the train wrecks. So, yeah, I think that's probably like my, uh, guilty pleasure, viewing. So, okay, what have you learned about yourself from podcasting? I've learned that I really do enjoy connecting with people. I love when people get vulnerable and tell me things that they haven't really said before. I frequently hear and I appreciate it when they say this has been my favorite podcast because it's so different. Um, and so I like having meaningful conversations, and I've had some great ones. Um, just hearing so many different perspectives. I've learned greater empathy for people who maybe don't look or act like me or have different challenges than me. I've um yeah, and just the whole purpose of starting this podcast in the first place was I had such a big eclectic group of friends and they were kind of segmented. I had my wrestling friends, I had my law friends, I had my church friends, I had um my high school friends, all these different areas, and they were all very different. And it was likely that none of them were ever going to cross paths or be friends themselves. I was kind of the one who would bring them all in. In fact, one time I hosted a party for a UFC event and I invited everybody together, and everybody was so shocked that there were so many different people here. So, I think what I've learned was the premise of the show is real, and that is that every single person you meet is having a very real human experience, and that we actually have more alike than more in common than we have differences. So, Which podcast have you learned the most from? I couldn't tell you that. I've learned something from every single one of them. I've learned that wrestlers are super interesting people. I've done a lot of wrestling podcasts. In fact, I'm fighting like there's almost like an urge or like a momentum to becoming a wrestling podcast, but I'm trying to not do that. I don't want this to, I like all of the conversations I have. I know that I do a lot of wrestling content and I like doing that, but I'm just I love meeting everybody. But anyhow, I've learned from a lot of the wrestlers. I've learned from some of the people, some of the like, for example, I had, Ned Telford, the Sacramento Temple president, on. I've had, President Talley, the former mission president here in the Roseville mission. He was really great. Um, I've had Patrick Mason on a couple of times, Matthew L. Harris on a couple of times, which are LDS historians, which has been great. I've had, you know, therapists on. I've had prostitutes on and people in the porn industry, and they've all had a very interesting story. And I've learned a little something from all of them. Some of them, what I how I want to be, and how I definitely don't want to be. Yeah, I hope I'm not dodging some of these questions. I just don't have an answer for one I've learned the most from. Um, okay, let's see. Trying to get through some of these other kind of well, I think that might have been kind of the one that doesn't have to go super deep. Let's see. All right, here's one. How do you know when someone is healed and ready for a new relationship? I mean, you got me. uh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you can. I mean, so I think there's only so much healing you can do on your own, right? I mean, if you have some sort of trauma from a past relationship, I don't think you can fully heal all of that until you're in a new relationship, right? I mean, you can't really heal that stuff until you know how you're going to respond. So, so yeah, I mean, if you're waiting for someone to be some perfect work of art that is fully healed from their world's trauma, I don't know if that's even possible. You're going to have to work with somebody, if especially if they're in a space where they've had a bad relationship in the past. So, hopefully that is helpful. Okay. So, if you could give your younger self some advice, what would it be? There's a couple of things I would say. First, I would say, remember that every part of your life has a season, and don't hang on to things that do not serve you. And I think in some aspects, I've been good at that. One of the things that have, uh, I feel like I have done pretty well is when I leave a certain season of my life, I look back on them almost all of them fondly, but I don't really have a desire to go back to them. High school reunions, like I had a great high school experience, loved everybody, had a great time. Also, really don't have a desire to go to a high school reunion. Just everybody that I wanna talk to in high school, I still do. I'm still friends with all those guys and gals that I want to be. The same thing with went on a mission, loved my mission, had a great time. Um, Still keep in contact with people from the mission, but I don't have a desire to go back. And I'm in this interesting transition period right now with my kids, and that they're all, my 4 children are all um, kind of in the teenage realm or higher. My oldest being on a mission in Peru, just talked to him, and um, it's becoming a very real thing that he's going to come back and probably get married, start having kids. Not right away, but in the next realistically 4 or 5 years, that's a real possibility. So I'm staring, that in the face, and I mentioned to him probably about a month or two back. Um, I've always looked at my kids as kind of supporting characters in my story, and it's kind of interesting to think that now I'm gonna kinda transition away to being a supporting character in his story as he comes back from his mission in less than 15 months now. He'll come back and he'll take on the world. And it'll just be, I think I'm kind of ready for that. Um, so yeah, I can feel the seasons changing again, and I'm looking, and I'm looking forward to it. So, and as I said before, I think the other thing would be, don't let your desire for success um, color your decision making such that you hold on to things that are not good for you. And so, so if you're in a spot that you know isn't good for you, my advice to you and my younger self would be: you're never gonna be healthy, um, physically, emotionally, or spiritually by staying in the same place that made you sick in the first place. So, yeah, that's the advice. Okay. Um, all right. I think we're gonna start getting deeper here. We had another video that was sent to me, that we're gonna talk about. So a friend of mine just sent me a TikTok video and said, "Can you comment on this?" And I was like, okay, well, I think it was kind of more of a, what do you think about what she's saying? So I did a little research on this person. So this is a member of, well, a former member of the LDS faith. And she has become somewhat of a quote unquote ex-Mormon influencer and started a podcast. And so, and there were some things that she said on her podcast about her experience leaving the church that might be true, might not be true, but some things I definitely take issue with. And so I'm going to comment on it. And I want to start, before I do that, and kind of put a preface on that. Um, so I do not judge anyone who's made a decision to leave a high demand religion, particularly when we come to the LDS faith. I am not. I am an active member. I have a testimony of the truth claims of the church. I do believe that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and I follow him to the best of my ability, not perfectly, but I do try very hard. And I have friends on what I would call different areas of the faith doubt spectrum, and they're on different faith journeys, and some have decided that they doubt and don't believe anymore, and either take that information and do or do not go to church. And again, I'm not critical of anybody doing that. However, I am critical sometimes of the way people um, take things out of context or say things that are not true to kind of bolster an opinion, or take a framing of some information and put it in a way that's an unfavorable light. Um, if you want to, talk about the truth claims, the evidence for whether the Book of Mormon is true or not, or Joseph Smith was a prophet or not, I could talk about that all day, and I can understand that reasonable minds may look at the same evidence and come to different conclusions, and I don't fault anybody for taking a different conclusion based on their experience and what they're going through. I got lots of friends who don't go anymore, but I just thought this was a little interesting, and I kind of wanted to comment on it. Well, I don't know if wanted to comment on it. It was sent, so I will comment on it. Okay, let's see if we can make this work. I hope you guys can hear this.
A high demand religion does not allow you to exist on your terms.
Yeah.
The reason for this is because the church is always pushing its members to get where? The temple. You can't go to the temple unless you're paying 10% of your income.
Yeah.
That's a huge sacrifice. 10% of your income, no coffee, no tea, no rated R movies. To be an active member of the church, that's participating in the church the way that it is prescribed to you, your life is like a 9-year-old child.
Well,
You don't cuss, you don't criticize, you don't gossip, you don't dress immodestly, you don't go to clubs, you don't have the appearance of evil, you don't do any adult things. And so that is a huge sacrifice. And if you're not doing it that way, there's this constant state of at least low-grade shame, because all of the lessons in church are geared toward getting members to conform to this prescribed archetype. And so you don't realize that until you step outside and you're going through this experience where you're like, okay, I'm going to develop my own kind of iron rod.
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, let me emphasize, I do not judge this woman, and I know you can't see her. If you want to look her up, you certainly can. I believe it's Faith Unraveled is what it's called on TikTok. I don't fault her at all for making a decision to leave the church, and I know a lot of people who have, and I'm sure she's got very strong reasons, and I'm sure it was a struggle for her and to make that decision. So I'm sure it wasn't and I'll just say I'm not. I do not believe, like, I have some friends who will say things like, well, the only reason, people would leave the church is because they want to sin or they want to do something different. They don't want to follow the rules. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. Not all. I mean, not to say that doesn't happen ever, but I don't think that happens every time. So understand that what I'm about to say is not a criticism of her decision. It's just the way she's framing it. So living the gospel means you're living like a 9-year-old child. That completely misunderstands it. First of all, I you can't go to clubs. I go to clubs. You can't watch R-rated movies. Yes, you can. There is no, she mentioned go to the temple. There's no rated R movie question on the temple recommend interview. There's no don't go to clubs temple recommend question. So that's not simply not true. There are I know lots of members who cuss. Almost all the members gossip. Like, I don't understand where she's coming from, where she says, oh, they demand this conformity. And first of all, let me also comment on this. So not cussing, not gossiping, dressing immodestly, avoiding, crude environments, and trying not to tear people down. They're not childish behaviors. It's just, we're adults. Like, you think that those are adult decisions? You think you don't get to participate in adult things like cussing and gossiping and going to clubs and dressing immodestly? I think you misunderstand what maturity is. I mean, and again, like I said, some of these things you can absolutely do. I do them. Just a week or two ago, I went to a bar for an 80s cover band. That's not that nobody is gonna take my temple recommend from that. I didn't drink. I didn't drink alcohol. So, I would frame it like this. The church, in many ways, is teaching you to have a more disciplined and life and make more mature choices. Anyone can follow impulses to cuss and do these other things. It takes real maturity to govern them. And so, like I said, I mean, if membership is dependent on never gossiping or criticizing, a lot of people are going to struggle with that standard. And I think it's also important to this shame component. I think it's also really important to remember that within the church, the standard is really an aspirational one. It's not one that you can make. Be ye therefore perfect. You're not going to be perfect. It's okay. None of us are. We are all struggling with something in the gospel. So this idea that, they push for conformity and there's always this low grade shame. I'm sorry, but I don't feel a low grade shame when I go to church. In fact, quite the contrary. It gives me hope. The atonement gives me hope that these things that I wish I could be, but I'm struggling with, can be rectified. So, now I will agree that there are some members that are overly judgy and they gossip and they judge. And if you came wearing spaghetti straps to church, there's certainly people who would look at you sideways. But church is not about pretending that you're perfect. It's about people trying to become better through Christ. So, like I said, anyone can indulge in impulses, but choosing restraint, kindness, and dignity, that's not childish, that's character. So, okay, that's that one. All right, we got a um, couple of other big questions. Let's see. I'm gonna get this one. All right, I'll take this one first. Okay. When a husband and wife disagree on an issue that's big, but not likely morally wrong, for example, like moving or not, or running a business or not, and they both want different things, who gets to decide? If one is going to be unhappy, who gets to decide? Please consider that this issue is not serious enough to get divorced over. But what happens when you and your spouse want different things or ways of living? That's a tough one, right? There are people out there who I think that there are men out there who, and I've run into them several times, who think that women should be submissive, and that because they're and by the way, what I will say is that this person is a member of the LDS Church, which does believe in traditional family roles, where men hold the priesthood and are considered to be the person presiding over over the home, and so there are some men in the church who believe that women should be submissive and that the man gets the final say all the time. There's also a contingent of people, and I think it's more even the men than the women, who are like happy wife, happy life, right? Um, which also is another extreme. So, on both sides, you have these extremes that I think are prevalent in the church and cause problems. So, but I think the gospel actually gives a really helpful framework. So, there's not a president and vice president in marriage. I believe that was L. Tom Perry, a former apostle who passed away, said. Um, the proclamation to the world on the family teaches that husbands and wives are equal partners. And so neither person permanently outranks the other. Um, and I think I've said this in the past. I liken marriage to uh, a law partnership, where when you have two partners who are 50-50 equity in the firm, um, each partner has a fiduciary duty to each other to not do anything in their own self-interest that would negatively affect the firm or the partnership. I think it should be the same way. So it's not about one person being able to make all the winning decisions. It's about building unity. Um, as far as these examples that you're giving, I think each decision should be handled independently based on um, the needs and effect it has on the spouse. So different issues may have a different effect on each spouse. Sometimes a decision might impact the husband more, sometimes the wife more. And you guys just have to, in wisdom and charity, kind of recognize that and make decisions based on that. Um, and I'd say that neither spouse should be made to simply suffer through the other's decision. So um, it's supposed to be marriage is supposed to be a place of love and safety, and so it's not about who wins. It's about a solution that honors the needs of both people, and sometimes both parties are going to have to acquiesce to the other for the benefit of the marriage. So in practice, sometimes the husband may take the lead on a decision, and sometimes the wife may, not because of rank, but because of experience or how the issues affect each person. So I think there's a healthy part of mutual deference rather than permanent authority. And um, so I think in the end, my view, couples should counsel together, pray together, and seek unity in a decision. And sometimes that means compromise. Sometimes it means patience and until maybe timing becomes more clear on something. Sometimes love means willingly yielding to the other person on particular issues and putting your needs aside for the service of your partner. And knowing that that same grace will be extended in return. So to finish this question, I think Gordon B. Hinckley said it best when he said, if every husband made his wife's comfort his first priority and every wife made her husband's comfort her first priority, there would be less divorce in the world. Now, I think what that means is if one party is making the other one's comfort their first priority, and the other party is making their own comfort their first priority, then one person is never the priority, and that's the problem. So, mutual understanding and mutual decision making is important. Hope that answers it. So, okay, I got one more question that we're going to go through, and this one was a tough one. Let's see. Okay. How does an LDS wife who firmly believes that there should be a parent in the home available to the kids, especially for times when they are sick and need to stay home, and for just general good supervision and guidance and assistance, and attend to the needs of maintaining a home, but also feel it's really intellectual, understimulating, and lonely, go about being happy in this role? Am I ungrateful for what I have, or for feeling unfulfilled by the job that is supposed to make me feel the most fulfilled and happy? I feel self-centered for wanting the regular adult interaction and worldly acknowledgement I once had in a job, or money to go take classes I'm interested in, or pursue hobbies and goals that feel fulfilling. Make no mistake, I also remember being stressed all the time by the weekly grind, especially if it conflicted with other things I needed to do, or when I was sick and felt worried about not being at work. I am wondering if I am just wishing for something that's not as good as what I already have, with all the flexibility I already enjoy. I know lots of women in the church work outside the home, and I always felt judgmentally that they didn't have enough faith and humility to follow God's role for women, but sometimes I think I don't either because I'm not doing this cheerfully and authentically. What are your thoughts? Okay. Well, that's a lot. So usually when I have questions, I don't on the podcast, I purposely don't really think about them beforehand, but this one I did because I think it's an important one. Um, so I think the first thing that you should recognize is that what you're feeling is really, it's not selfishness, it's just human. I mean, it is possible to feel grateful for your family and the flexibility you have, but also feel understimulated intellectually, right? Or even lonely at times. Those two things, it can happen at the same time. That doesn't mean you're ungrateful, just means you're a whole person and you got different needs and you got different talents and you got different desires. We learn through the plan of salvation that we lived before we were born, and that the personality traits we had here actually came with us. And so we believe that people are intentionally different. And so we have different personalities, we have different gifts, we have different capabilities, we grew up in different environments, we have different DNA, different there's all sorts of different things, and some women particularly feel deeply fulfilled just focusing on being a homemaker or a stay-at-home mom. And then there's others who feel energized when they combine family life with education, excuse me, or work or service or creative pursuits. Um, I don't think either one of those reflects a greater or lesser faith. They're just different expressions of the gifts that God gave you as a certain individual person. Um, And I also think this is another one where the proclamation of the world on the family is important. It says that, while fathers generally preside and provide and protect, and mothers primarily are responsible for the nurture of their children. It also says that certain things may necessitate individual adaptation. I think they reference disability and death, but they also represent other circumstances. And I think that's really important because um, it acknowledges that not all families function identically. In my life, some of the best people I know, both parents worked. Um, and I know several wonderful people where the mother stayed home. I know some people where the father stayed home. Um, and so life circumstances, personalities, opportunities, and the seasons of life can make families adapt in ways that still honor gospel principles, but also meet the real needs of the specific individuals in a family. So, and that's another thing I think is important to remember is that maybe we've been talking a lot about seasons of life, right? And each season may emphasize something different. So when your kids were younger, maybe you needed to be home more. And as they get older and they're in full-time school, maybe that changes. Or maybe, maybe you're in a situation where where the husband is more readily suited to be the stay-at-home parent. Or maybe finances are such that both parents need to work, or they just need to work for their own sanity. Um, and so it's all of these feelings I feel is just simply navigating life. So, um, and I can tell you from my own personal experience that I don't think fulfillment has ever come from one role alone. I wear many hats. I am a father. I am an attorney. I am a podcaster. I'm a pro wrestler. I work with the parent service organization at my kid's school. I derive meaning from all of those things and fulfillment from all of those things. I don't think either any one of those things is more important than the other. Um, and so you can be a loving mother, um, and still need adult interaction and learning and creativity or goals and achievement. That's not being selfish at all. So I would tell you, be gentle with yourself. Um, and also don't worry about past judgments. You're not the same person you were last year or last month or even yesterday. I mean, the interesting thing about change is we make this, how do I say this? The funny thing about change is we act like change is so difficult, right? Um, there's this illusion that change is hard and that it takes time. And I really think that that's one of Satan's greatest lies. The truth is, change happens in the very moment that you decide. You don't need more time. You need a shift in being. So, a shift towards faith. Um, so, don't judge yourself um, for the past. Um, just focus on the now and the future. You're not the same person. If you in the past have judged somebody, you can change that today and you are immediately a different person. And as far as that goes, for anybody out there, this is kind of shifting to something else I've been thinking about, um, same thing, that this change takes time. I don't believe that. Um, there are infinite different versions of you in the future that are all contingent on and defined by choices that you're about to make. So one choice, one small pivot, and the entire path could be opened up to you. So don't underestimate how transformative one moment of faith can be. So, because it's in that moment at the brink of doubt where you choose faith, where everything, where the miracle unfolds. So, all right, that's it. So I would just say, and I feel impressed to say that if you're in that space where you're stuck between faith and doubt, wondering what to do, just listen to the still small voice. And more important, listen to the version of you that stood among those noble and great ones who shouted for joy, because that's a version of you that is trying to call you home. So, grateful for you. We hit an hour. Not bad. Great questions, guys. Really appreciate it. Love the listeners. For those of you who've made it this far, if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now, share it with other people. I love reviews. If you can give me a review on Apple Podcast. I don't know if they do reviews on YouTube or not. I don't know. If you disagree with anything I said, or maybe even if you agree with what I said, or you just want to say hi, go ahead and put a comment on the YouTube channel. Love to see those as well. If you say something wild or dirty, I'm going to delete it. So, but well, maybe I won't. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Depends on how funny you are. Anyway, all right, guys, that's great. I got a bunch of cool stuff coming up, so stay tuned. Always do. And, be good to each other, and we'll see you soon.